I've been looking forward to this conversation with you, Sucharita and Artemis, even as I've been personally reflecting on what retail has meant to me, both as a shopper and like yourselves in serving as a professional. As I think about a pre-pandemic world, I see much of the shopping experience as equal parts theater, service, and promise, all within a branded environment I would have recognized, whether in Boston or Barcelona, San Francisco or Singapore, Dallas and Dubai, cities that I was seeing a lot of over the last couple of years, in fact. Today, we have an expanded range of ways and means to serve a more demanding and discerning shopper. A shopper who can shop from anywhere and at any time. A shopper who has product information at their very fingertips. A shopper that, if they're an influencer, can and will tell the world what they think of that store, with the whole world listening and likewise deciding. The days of temporary price reductions, general advertising, and I don't know, stack it high, watch it fly, I think are no longer, or at least by themselves, sufficient, if you will, to entice. Retail has come full circle through a period of mass manufacturing, distribution, and marketing to a point where a comprehensive customer experience now sets the very stage for a more interesting, useful, and perhaps authentic buyer-seller relationship. And it's with this recognition that I thought it would be interesting for all of us to chat a bit and explore what you think has been happening and where you think we're heading. The requirements to power and empower a seamless customer experience was already being examined and experimented with pre-COVID. Given the immediate needs of our times, however, retailers accelerated these changes. So the first question to both of you, if I may pose, and to start, what have we learned so far, and how has this impacted the adoption of new processes and technologies that retailers have been rushing to bring to market that they can serve shoppers wherever they are, whatever their need states?
Yeah, I can certainly jump in. One of the things that I think we learned through the pandemic was this great ability to move very quickly. Retailers really had no choice but to just jump to it and put in things that they may have been discussing candidly for decades, whether it was inventory visibility across channels or curbside pickup and ship from store programs. These were initiatives that retailers had been talking about since the year 2000. They quickly figured out a way to integrate these into their businesses. And I think that will be one of the lasting legacies, is this ability to move quickly, to experiment, and to really just deliver against what are the attributes that consumers want, and how do you do that as rapidly and in a way that helps you still also meet your goals for your stores and your store associates.
Yeah, that's great. Artemis, what are your thoughts here?
I completely agree with Sucharita. I think that speed to response, particularly around some of the how we could utilize store tech and just innovation as a whole, was amazing. And we continue to see that. I think that's going to be one of the things that takes us into the future of retail, and the need to do so to match the consumer needs. The things I would add to it are the focus on just analytics, and especially in this world where there was a little bit less of a playbook. I mean, we've been through all kinds of shifts, but just being able to, go with the data you have and go outside of, how you planned normally year over year, and just that attention to detail. I think the teams that were set up for looking at the data, maybe a little bit more data centric, maybe a little bit more digital first, are the ones, I believe, thriving through some of this. And then, I mentioned the digital first thinking. There's a need to make sure they're understanding, kind of, if they hadn't the last 20 years, the emphasis around e-commerce and utilizing what Sucharita mentioned around things like curbside pickup. That's not going to go away when the pandemic is over. You're going to see the consumers kind of holding on to some of that for sure. So I think, again, the brands that aren't thinking of it as just a short-term fix that really are embracing digital now, and hopefully aligning it with the people they're hiring and the talent they're retaining, to kind of take them into the next iteration of their own brands and how they have to think about the consumer.
Yeah, that's got a lot covered, Artemis. I'm struck by two things. You mentioned analytics in the beginning, and then, how do we hire? And I think implied, right? How do we train? How do we inspire, if you will, the folks who are serving us, that they can actually feel a part of the experience themselves? I think that lends itself, we spoke about this a moment ago, to more authentic experience. And so, Sucharita, I'm wondering how we can build on that. Analytics and staffing. How do you envision retailers more effectively communicating and engaging with their guests once we come through this period and into a hopefully safer world?
Yeah, so the question of analytics and staffing, these are two of the biggest questions that I think every merchant needs to really grapple with. And from an analytics standpoint, a lot of it is just getting the right inputs all in one place. We're seeing tremendous investments in customer data platforms. We are seeing investments in things like chief data officers. So certainly and that also segues into hiring, right? Because it is rethinking the org structure, getting the right people in place to actually come up with the insights and then act on the insights. The last piece that's probably also critical to think about is operationalizing everything. But it's not just the customer data piece, it's also product data, there's store analytics data. So we're seeing data infusing the need for data, the hunger for data, and kind of data warehouses that integrate all kinds of data sources that help support an operation, a retail operation. From a hiring standpoint, what we're seeing is senior level employees reporting to C-levels, chief data science officers, heads of data, and all of those people have data science teams. They're hiring PhDs and statisticians to better understand where their gaps are, where their opportunities are. And this brings forward a new culture of decision-making that's data-driven, as opposed to opinion-driven, which is often historically how retail has often made decisions in the past.
Right, I appreciate that. And I really appreciate what you just said about reacting to and the gut instinct. So much of retail intergenerationally has been about incremental improvement. And I think shoppers in this day and age have become more, how should you say, expectant of what they're going to get for their time and their money, and relentless, if you will, even in their quest to find that ideal experience, and not just the right product at the right price at the right time, but is it worth going to this store versus that store for the pair of jeans or for the gown or what have you? So regarding shoppers, we've mostly been shopping, all of us, right from home for a year now. How, Artemis, do you imagine the next phase of shopping? And I'm also thinking about, when I asked that question, frictionless commerce, and we're talking about digital transformation. So some combination of in-store and out-store, the omni-channel is what many have been calling it for a while. What are your thoughts about what comes next, and even next after next?
Right. So I do think you're going to see some of the behavior that we've seen through the pandemic, some of the education, some of the innovation in tech and connecting stores and online to continue. I think that's going to be a win, honestly, for many retailers. They wanted to get there, and it's been happening incrementally versus kind of this kind of major shift. So I'm hoping that brands are many of our brands know that, and they're continuing to invest in the people and the tech to make that possible. But I do think there's an element of, especially after this last year and what may end up being more like a year and a half, that there's an experience element that we can't forget about. That there are some people that are really looking forward to going back and having kind of a bit of their routine that may involve some stores more than others. But I do think that we will see that. I think many of our retail brands are thinking about what the store should look like, what kind of training and support they're giving their associates in stores to kind of build off of this momentum and this crazy year that we've had. So we'll keep seeing the tech investment, but you're going to see the consumer come back and to engage in that experience and want a mix of a little bit of what they had and maybe a little bit more of that kind of 360 shopping experience that they have learned to that is their norm now. So I think the answer is you're going to see a mix, and the tech behind it, the teams behind it are going to be critical to making that possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been fascinated to both watch as a practitioner, but participate as a shopper myself in this new age. I mean, the speed at which we've adapted is astonishing. When we think back, I think in a few years hence, we're going to realize just how much changed in the space of 12 months and how much didn't change back. We've had to move forward. And I think that will not be lost on leadership as they begin the process of inventing shopping for a new age. So final thoughts then from both of you. We've been talking about the store and shopper experience and what have you, and the utilization of technology and how do we hire and train. I think that was implied in some of this. What's it actually going to mean? What's the effect, the rational experience of why? I'm going to ask myself, why should I go back to a store at all when this is done and said? What are my expectations? What should stores be thinking about in order to serve me more comprehensively? And I use that word inspired a couple times today, but what is it they're going to do to inspire us that we'll want to come back to the store? And I know that we're all going to be anxious to get out and about again, go to restaurants, see our friends, walk down, Main Street with our loot, if you will. But beyond that, what's it going to take? What is it about us that stores are going to have to reflect on? Because we're going to be manifestly different out of this on the other side. And I think stores are going to have to recognize that. So I'd like both your thoughts there, if I may.
When we're thinking about stores, stores are not going away. Stores are an institution that have been around for thousands of years. And what we may see in the future is a shakeout of stores, particularly in a region like the United States, where we have more stores per capita than almost anywhere else in the world. But stores are also incredibly resilient. We've seen fewer stores closing through the pandemic than we would have anticipated. And I think a large part of that is that stores serve a purpose. It's everything from being able to get merchandise quickly to enabling people to touch and feel merchandise. They serve as experiential centers where people discover products and can learn about the attributes of different products and ask questions about those products. In terms of how technology can support that, there are so many things that technology can still do, whether it is enabling customers to talk to a store associate that may or may not even be physically located at that location, but can still answer a question at a more proximate store. So I think that the ideas around technology enabling and enhancing stores will be very, very different in the next decade, and they'll be more exciting, and it will be all solutions that improve margins, but also help to improve the customer experience.
Oh, terrific. Thanks so much for that. Artemis, your thoughts as we conclude?
I think Sucharita hit the nail on the head with all of this. I think for us, the retail industry is a resilient one. It's one that many times is kind of at the forefront of adopting what consumers kind of need on the innovation front. I think this will speed us along as well. I think some of the investments we need to continue to make, we'll see. But the core of that is kind of the health of the consumer and the state of the economy. And I think that's going to really impact, what they are going to be able to continue to spend. And we are a very, diverse industry. So and kind of represent everything from Main Street retailers to our largest chain brands. So I think we have to think of it diversify what that means and what the consumer is really wanting. So it'll be exciting. It'll be exciting to kind of get back to some of that normal again. And going back to kind of Sucharita's original points around kind of the speed of moving that I think was important. And I think it's good that the industry got that and our teams got that. We had some amazing conversations with, our CIOs talking about what they had to operate internally as kind of keeping the company running, but then, with that consumer facing element and how they had to collaborate with their peers, there's some big wins coming out of this. So I think as long as we have, continue to work on kind of the spending power behind the consumers, keeping that economy as healthy as we can, taking the little wins that we had out of this is moving perhaps a little bit faster, kind of implementing that tech, thinking of our teams and the talent we need to run really successful organizations and consumer first kind of thinking. I think a lot of that will tie back to them coming back to that store and what the store of the future really looks like.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate that. I like that you said that little wins and they add up to big wins. And then, just thinking about stores and teams and, that we're here to serve. I've often thought my best shopping experiences wasn't just about what I bought, though that certainly was the primary reason for going there in the first place. But the experience itself, how was I treated? Was I acknowledged? Sure, a clean store, but was it curated in a way that made it interesting? And I think that stores have had a chance to, if you will, pause in the midst of this extraordinary moment in history, take a breath and reassess, what are we here to do? What are we here? What's our purpose? And it's not just, if you will, selling lots of stuff and turning a profit. Certainly stores do both those things, but when they serve authentically and when they serve with thoughtfulness, I think they serve their purpose as well. And I, for one, am looking forward to visiting stores again and seeing my friends and enjoying a day of shopping once in a while, breaking up my week. So I just want to thank both of you. I thought it was a great conversation, and I'm looking forward to the balance of the hours that we're all going to be spending together. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.